Welcome to Danny Houlihan's Irish Experience podcast. Join Danny on a journey through the historical island of Ireland, its people and the wild Atlantic Way, which is Ireland's last frontier. Experience the music and the culture that makes up the longest coastal driving route in the world. Now, please welcome your host, Danny Houlihan.
Curran fáilte go dtí Slín Atlantic Ian. Welcome to the Wild Atlantic Way and Danny Houlihan's Irish Experience Show. Our studio Bolivan and Own, Vinón the Shannana Cúnde Kerry, from the banks of the Shannon River in County Clare, Ireland. Welcome to you all from the banks of the Wild Atlantic Way and Danny Houlihan's Irish Experience Show. This morning we are on a new journey, live also from our Ballybunnin YXQ internet radio station, from the banks of the beautiful Shannon Estuary in County Clare, Ireland. This webcasting station will be dedicated to local history and the faces and the people that shaped the Wild Atlantic Way and still shape the Wild Atlantic Way. Through in-depth research and site visits, YXQ will weave a magic tapestry of the landscape of ancient Éireann, its people and its forgotten past lifeways. I will endeavour, as usual as a local historian, to bring to the production a scientific approach to the evaluation and dissemination of the findings which I uncover, some serious and sometimes funny. It's not all the time serious, guys. I have already amassed 76 odd podcast productions, the largest for any historian in our Kerry, and over the course of the webcasting station's life and transmission times, these will be highlighted again and updated accordingly. Now, on to my new series, Seekers of the Little Ark of Kilbaha. No, everyone, it's not an episode from an Indiana Jones film. It came very close to it, though. This was a unique secular Christian relic which is still with us today. Thankfully, in the last few weeks, I have been very lucky to stand in front of it and indeed poke my head inside. The Ark. What a piece of history. So without further ado, sit back and enjoy this episode from County Clare, Ireland, Seekers of the Little Ark of Kilbaha. When I was a young boy, my late mother, whose ancestors were from Kilrush, County Clare, related a story to me many a time, which all Irish people at home and abroad will relate to. In the days of the landlords, or to quote a local parish priest in the Ballybunnin area, the late Father Matthias McMahon, greedy, bloodthirsty sharks of the realm, whose henchmen roamed the Irish countryside, evicting and fueling an Irish genocide. This story is not a legend or a myth, but a real story, a Clare story, which was a triumph in the face of insane humanity to man, woman and child. The Little Ark of Kilbaha and his priest championed their people. Our story begins in a beautiful place called Kilbaha, County Clare, with the sound of the crashing waves against this horseshoe-shaped bay, and also in the air the sounds of the seabirds, backdropped by evictions and ruthless land agents with no morals. This relic, the Ark, was a beacon for the people of Kilbaha, who were forced by the landed gentry to have mass celebrated on the strand. This small wooden structure was pulled onto the strand as a refuge for the priest and the local Catholics to celebrate Mass during the years of 1845 and Black 47. These dates left a trail of destruction in the Irish countryside at that time. Death, starvation, with the arrival of blight and the ruthless land agents who were totally, really rotten. We go back a few years to understand the need for the Ark and what followed and the names associated with the structure. In County Clare, like County Kerry, the power over the people was in the hands of the grimy landlords and their ruthless agents, who with the sanction of these landlords inflicted higher rates of taxes and indeed wholesale evictions and indeed death. This to a student in Ireland today is far off in time, a place not to be revisited, but spoken of in a structured tone. As a historian, I will cover this aspect as many times as I can to highlight what our people went through and how successful the country of Ireland has become both home and abroad, thanks to their suffering. The Loophead Peninsula backdrops the scene, with over 4,000 souls being starved to death in the area, coupled with the rise in the activities of superism and the attempts to lure Catholics to school by means of soup and school books. This was encouraged by the landlords of the time in Kilkee, Kilrush, and it should be noted, Kilkee, Kilrush formed one parish. Its principal church was at Carrigaholt. Like many other places in Ireland at that time, were subjected, as I've spoken before, subjected to power, and this power was at the hand of the landlords. They were the authority. In this isolated region, there were Westbys and Burton, led by their ruthless land agent Marcus Keane, a notorious hard man known as the Exterminator General of Clare. The landlords were described by the Reverend Dermot Kenny in his book, The Little Ark, quote, the worst traditions of their class. In fact, when he died, his body went missing, that was Keane, from his grave. A figure of up to 4,000 souls lost their lives in the area due to the actions and lack of actions by these ruthless people and their agents who took the pride in superism and the suppression of the Catholic faith. Indeed, one can describe the actions of these people and their agents as totally disgraceful. Okay, everyone, the history of these colourful characters is vast, so it will deserve more time in another episode, so stay tuned. The situation on the Loophead Peninsula changed with the death of a beloved priest by the name of Father Duggan. This gave the landlords and their greedy agents an opportunity to gain control over the local Catholics and their customs and traditions, as at that time there were no schools in the area, only in Carrigaholt. Like areas in our Kerry had only schools set up in the shade of hedges and ditches and old broken down houses. The fact that in this area there was no chapel, only in Carrigaholt. There were churches in Dunaha and Cross, but from Cross to Loophead there was no church. Thus the opportunity for the proselytizers to make ground on the conversion of the Catholics in the area. Now at this stage, the scene is set as the landlords and the supers close in on Loophead to convert them to the Protestant faith. However, one man enters the picture, a priest, that would take on the injustice and the might of the local landlords and their ruthless agent, Cain, and he would lead his people into the light. A new priest enters the scene in the area, a man by the name of Fr Michael Meehan. Fr Michael Meehan was born in Ennis circa 1810 and received his holy orders in 1835 in Maynooth and served in parishes of Dura and Kilrush before Carrigaholt. He was a good, strong athlete according to local tradition, and indeed a musician, composing many hymns, poems and tunes in both languages. He was a good shot as well with a gun. At this early stage in his parish, the vile campaign of superism was raging, and was inflicting hardship on the people of the Loophead Peninsula with offers of hot food, books, but all had to attend the Protestant religious services. The normal religious teaching was considered not acceptable and indeed superstitious and idolatry. Father Meehan had his work cut out for him. Farmers were warned by Marcus Keane not to allow Mass to be said on their property, with the fear of eviction being threatened. The main aim of this was the halting of Catholic Masses in the area. From my research, I have found out that the tide was beginning to turn slowly when, according to local sources, the priest purchased 2 houses side by side from a local family who were immigrating to America. In turn, the priest converted these buildings into a small chapel. However, eviction was served on him rapidly and the chapel was flattened to the ground. Fr Michael Meehan would not despair, where others would have walked away. Sunday afterwards, he made his way to the Strand in Kilbaha and celebrated Mass on 2 carts with their shafts turned upwards, with a flat board as a platform was used, with a covering of a number of sheets to give him a bit of shade. However, on a fine day, it was fine, it was perfect. But on the wet day, Mass had to be cancelled. Later he constructed a tent with poles. Indeed, the priest was not giving up, but alas, this failed. He was now feeling a bit despaired on the outcome, but he still kept his faith. Heavy times on Loophead, and the way our people were treated. One can just imagine what was going on in the head of Michael Meehan to find a direction in which he and his congregation could celebrate Mass. But he did, and in the decades to follow, his name and his deeds would spread around the country and indeed abroad for his efforts. Now this is where the priest comes up with an idea. After taking a journey from Kilkee to Kilrush, on, in those days, one of those omnibuses, pondering where he could celebrate Mass, divine inspiration came to Father Meehan. After returning home, the idea of an omnibus was his solution. The priest, who had in his pocket his last £10 note, Father Meehan proceeded to a carpenter in Carrigaholt by the name of Owen Collins, who, on hearing the crusading priest's idea, set to work. A gifted tradesman he was, on the Little Ark. The Little Ark was constructed in 1852 on the lines of a bathing box and had wheels so as to be pulled. An altar was fitted in one end, and there were windows on either side to throw light into the ark for the priest celebrating Mass and for all to see. From the remaining history of the event, the ark was brought in procession from Carrigaholt to Kilbaha and was placed on the shore between low and high water marks. Father Meehan now knew that he was on a winner, but for the landlords and the supers, they knew the end was approaching, resulting in a court case being taken against the priest for causing a nuisance obstructing the road in Kilbaha, but the court went in favour of the priest. The end was looming for the landlords and their agent, Marcus Keane, who still kept his eye on the priest. After this event, the ark was used to celebrate Mass for 5 years or more, in all weathers, and it has been related that those praying in the rain covered their Bibles with their hats, and others stated that it rained behind the congregation during the Masses, and while certain Masses were celebrating and were going on. Marriages were performed in front of the ark and babies baptised. This was now a relic of the area and a beacon for others. Indeed, the legend of the Little Ark spread all over the countryside, with people coming to see the ark from around Ireland and abroad. In 1857, a site for a church was finally obtained in Moneen. The stone was laid in July 1888, and after a new school was constructed, the days of superism, the tide was firmly on the way out. The ark was never forgotten, but placed within the confines of the church. So this is a brief history, folks. I mean, it's very brief, of the ark. So I hope you've enjoyed it so far. as I've consulted books, written papers, newspaper clippings, etc. of the time. So I hope I've brought together a small little history of it in our own respect, because our podcast series, we have a short duration to walk through. So I will go back at some stage and do a more in-depth look and review of it. After we left the Tarbert car ferry in Kerryman, we journeyed through the scenic countryside of West Clare, with the rising and flowing hillsides of green grass around us. I could just imagine in those dark days, when there was no food in the area, what life was like. And on the island, with no way out, only by boat. The morning was very windy when we arrived at the Victorian seaside town of Kilkee. The place is stunning, no litter anywhere, and an air of tourism befalls the place. Kilkee means business when it comes to this lovely place and Clare's tourism. I took 2 brief walks around the area before we had refreshments. Both walks were well managed, and indeed the foresight many years ago to have shelters sited along the seafront in all directions so no one would ever get wet. This was a good idea. That was near the golf course. Another place I shall return to on my Irish experience. We parked in a well-maintained car park, and at that stage there were no more than a few cars. We had our much-needed refreshments just on the seafront, with the waves breaking in front of us. A great view from our window we had. It's a special place for any tour operator to bring visitors to. It's fabulous. It's a well-maintained facility, proud of any seaside resort, and there for all to use. In fact, the walk along the headland is right outside the door of this facility. For any tour operator, this is the place to stop. The staff are very friendly. Indeed, the food was excellent. I can always remember having a sausage roll, and indeed one could taste it compared to other places where the roll is stuffed with herbs. I checked out the restrooms. Impeccable condition and very, very clean. All in all, my visit here was well worth it. I'll be back again. I got a day to weddings there. Oh, what a pretty place and a backdrop, with the pollock holes in the distance and the huge waves breaking before the windows in this lovely facility. Now I journeyed on and back on for the search for the Little Ark of Kilbaha. Leaving the car park at this stage, which was now packed, and people heading for the cliffs and refreshments. This place leads others in its wake. It's called the Diamond Rock Cafe in Kilkee, and it's well worth the visit. I'll be back again. We travelled on southwards in a southerly direction to another stop along my quest for the Ark. This place I can see from my base here in Ballybunion is beautiful Carrigaholt, its quay and castle. This was but just a short visit, so its history will be brief. I'll cover Carrigaholt again in another episode. There's so much history in this area. Again, I should say this is another Wild Atlantic Way discovery point. So as a Wild Atlantic Way champion, I was keeping within my brief. The quay is scenic with the Wild Atlantic Way discovery point, which one can get a great picture of the castle behind it and pier, where boats are moored. And the area near the discovery point has many names of locals. The place has many amenities: historic castle, boat, angling, dolphin watching, bike hire, summer schools, walking, pubs and a slipway. Oh, what a lovely place. Along the countryside we went. To my left, I could see where we were going. We were rounding a bend, with the Shannon Estuary to my left. We arrived inland, and to my right there were wetlands, an area for birds. We skirted the shoreline, with the sights of the rock arm that had been put there to save the place. We finally had arrived in one of the most important locations where the Ark was placed by the Fr Michael Meehan in order to celebrate Mass for the people of West Clare. As we approach Kilbaha, the scene is that of a scenic horseshoe bay, backdropped by the hillside above it. It's a lovely place, but in hard times the environment was different, with the landlords and superism rife in the area and across Loophead. From an old pen and ink drawing, which still survives, one can see the ark placed in the village with the waves rolling in from the mighty Shannon, with hundreds of people surrounding it, and the crusading priest standing elevated on the doorway of the ark. Now, I walked around Kilbaha to get a sense of this historic place and to feel the wind blowing in from the Shannon on my face. The wind was high. Enough of the sightseeing. Where is the ark? We left Kilbaha, but before I noticed a large crowd at Keating's Bar in Kilbaha. I said to myself, I'll be back there again. Taking a left near the old hotel, we proceeded in an upwards direction, through the Irish countryside. There to the left, a schoolhouse broke the Irish skyline, and next to it, Moneen Church. We had finally found the resting place of the famous Christian relic, the Ark of Kilbaha. Everyone, the church was very quiet and still as we entered its holy ground. A beautiful, peaceful place with a unique history. On the wall to my left, there is a monument to the late Fr Michael Meehan. To my left, in an antechamber, backdropping a baptismal font, there in front of me was sited the old timber Ark of Kilbaha. As part of our heritage, preserved, its windows still had its glass in it, and the altar to the rear. I looked in reverently and tried to imagine the priest saying Mass. I did not have to imagine long. On the wall opposite me, there was an image of Fr Michael Meehan on the wall, and the light was illuminating him. Oh, everyone, this is a special place. I could feel the past in front of me. The ark was no flimsy construction. It was solidly built, thanks to the carpenter of the day in Carrigaholt, who constructed this ancient relic way back in antiquity on the street of Carrigaholt. I would not call it a bathing box to take away from its holy purpose, because it was built with another application the late priest wanted. Now there are no wheels under it now. It sits on a frame, but originally it had to be pulled, so wheels would have been under this particular relic, and indeed shafts as well. An A-shaped roof shielded the priest from the elements, and vantage point on either side the windows were used for. I stuck my head in for a few seconds. Oh, what a beautiful experience. One can feel the Clare history here. It's old, battered, but stands as a testament. Quote, in his book, The Little Ark of Kilbaha, is preserved within its community, which in modern times some relics are lost due to reckless disregard and in ignorance that we must preserve for posterity. Unquote. Standing in front of the Ark of Kilbaha, I could get a great sense of the history of its people. It's a beacon, one can feel it. It's an ancient, religious, Christian, Catholic beacon. This is alive. The small timber structure is still alive and with its people. In the words of the Clare people, quote, traditions linger unchanged amongst the superstitious peasantry for centuries and are never perhaps totally extinguished by the lapse of time. The Ark will never be forgotten. I hope you've all enjoyed the show. This is one of many from County Clare. Thank you to the people of Kilbaha and Moneen and the local people who now are gone to their just reward that concealed the little ark from the changing Ireland throughout the Black and Tan Civil War. This is truly a wild Atlantic Way experience. So before I go, I would like to thank Bruce Moriarty in Texas, USA, who paid for our coffees during this production. It went down great, Bruce, so thank you so much. So I'd like to remind everyone, if you'd like to support my Patreon page, Buy Me a Coffee, it's on the Buy Me a Coffee page. It's Buy Me a Coffee, YXQ Danny. So if you can, please support the site. I'll be back shortly on our YXQ Internet Radio with this episode and others. So, for the moment, I will say slán, bye for now.
Thanks for listening to our show. Through its people, its heritage and its rugged coastline, this is truly Danny Houlihan's Irish experience. Bye for now.